yeah, Jesus was crucified by Pilate and stuff, but it was a fake body, it was an image or whatever. The real Jesus was floating in space or whatever, like whatever the thing is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have something unique, not ever before discussed on any channel, anywhere. Front row seats. Docetism may be an erroneous category, or at least mostly mistaken. And so I want to have the expert who particularly dove into this in his new book, which you can pre-order right now in the link in the description, Dr. Richard Carrier, The Obsolete Paradigm of the Historical Jesus. Welcome.
Yeah, glad to be here. It's good.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with your thinking and just you know, a lot of people who don't know you, who might have hearsay, word of mouth, they just got to get to know the guy.
Yeah.
Gotta get to know the guy, because when you get to know you, you'll see there's much more than what the internet tries to paint a picture of. And at the end of the day, I read your book, and I'll tell you, I impressed. A lot of stuff I'm like, oh, I didn't really get that when I read his On the Historicity, or you know, so I'll hear you, and then I hear 15 other scholars, and then I'm like persuaded by the majority of voices in your head. And you know, but I'm very open to moving. Like someone could persuade me on the other side. I'm just gonna, it's how I am, right?
Yeah.
I'm flexible. But then I get to your chapter on Docetism, and now I'm not someone who really knows in and out Docetism. I've read strange gospels that in English sound like some weird crap's happening with Jesus. And so it might be worth briefly tackling Gnosticism. We brought up the Jesus seminar earlier, like how that category of a group that has this idea isn't...
yeah, I see what you mean. So what happened, so when I wrote On the Historicity of Jesus in 2014, so this is already 10, 11 years ago, people might not notice this, but I never mentioned Gnosticism, right, anywhere in the book. And a lot of like people who are pro-mythicist, like doubting of Jesus, whatever, usually like gung-ho for Gnosticism. And so they think like, how can you explain Christianity without Gnosticism? Like, how did you avoid ever discussing it? And when people would ask me that, I would say like, I just didn't see any evidence for it. I don't think Gnosticism was a thing. It had no explanatory value for anything.
Now you're saying Gnosticism.
That's right.
Whereas everyone was into gnosis.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the problems with the concept. Maybe I'll get with that a little bit later, but that gnosis just means knowledge, right? It usually meant like particularly like higher knowledge, spiritual knowledge, etc. But everybody was, so that therefore it's not a distinctive category. So even the orthodoxists are pro-gnosis, right? So that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell you a difference between anything, right? You can't distinguish. Like, there's Gnostics and Orthodox Christians. They're just all into gnosis, right?
Yeah.
So, and you could do it with everything. Like, every single thing that you think is distinctive of Gnosticism, like, either everybody believes it, or it's scattered groups believe it. No single group believed all of the things that were thought to be Gnostic, and so on. So that Gnosticism was kind of like, my impression was, and I just never mentioned it, because I never found any use for it. I didn't stake a position on it because I hadn't like deep dived it or researched. I just found no use for it in my book. And the reason though was that I thought that it had no explanatory value, because I don't think that Gnosticism, there's no sect that fits all the category items for Gnosticism. And all of the items were just scattered across all sects. That Orthodoxists have almost all the same beliefs, right? And so I found no use for it. Now, in 2014, when I published, I think it was like months later, the Westar Institute, which is sort of what the Jesus seminar was, right? Unanimously voted, like there's a ton of scholars, unanimously voted that Gnosticism didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And they said like, no, it's a modern scholarly construct that like, we had this idea in the early 20th century that's sort of like, basically, we had this hypothesis that organized all these groups under one label, but the hypothesis was false. There were no Gnostics. No one was called Gnostics. No sect held all the beliefs called Gnostics, called Gnosticism. And even Orthodoxy held tons of beliefs that are basically Gnostic, right? So I guess it doesn't mean anything. The category is useless. And so it's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And so I blogged about it and wrote about it. So when I came out with Obsolete Paradigm, I just went out and said, like, here's a state. I use tons of scholarship to cite now, right? Like, they've given up on it. Like, it's no longer a mainstream thing. Gnosticism does not exist. It was a scholarly construct. Like, it was a sort of a mirage, essentially. Like, modern scholars just thought they saw it in ancient texts, but it's not there. To give you an example, like, people will translate the treatise of Irenaeus as like against the Gnostics, right? But the Greek actually says against false knowledge. It doesn't say against knowledge. It doesn't say against the Gnostics. It says against false Gnostics. So that means he's not talking about Gnostics as these enemies. Everybody's a Gnostic. He's a Gnostic. Everybody's a Gnostic. So anyway, the category just dissolves when you do that. And so basically the whole field moved to my position, and I thought I was like an outlier in thinking this, but no, apparently the whole field agrees with me now that Gnosticism is a modern construct. Now, on the Historicity of Jesus, I did say something similar about Docetism, where I think it might not have existed, but I can't say for sure. But if it didn't exist, then we have some evidence here of mythicist Christians, early mythicist Christians. And then what happened in the last 10 years, every expert in Docetism studies, from M. David Litwa to Hockleta, like all kinds of scholars, Karen King, they're all saying, like, I don't think Docetism existed as a thing, right? So they're all moving to that. And so what I was able to do in Obsolete Paradigm is cite all of these scholars, quote them, and say, like, okay, look, the whole field has moved in the direction of admitting that Docetism is also a modern construct. It did not exist in the ancient world. And unlike Gnosticism, there were sects labeled Docetist in the ancient world, but they had nothing at all to do with what the modern construct of Docetism was. And anyway, so that was the scholarly position. And I realized, like, you know what? If the entire field has gotten to here, so what I need to do is I need to go through all the primary sources, all the sources that were supposed to be evidence of Docetism, and look at them with fresh eyes, because now we're admitting that it's not Docetism. So then what is it? Right? Like, what are they talking about? What's going on here? And so I went through this whole, and that's what the whole chapter, I go through all of this. I think like the total was like 14 scholars agree with me that Docetism didn't exist. There's a few more scholars who agree that these passages, a lot of these, like 1 John, for example, a lot of these passages reflect what they argue. This is these other scholars that I also cite and quote in my book. They argue that what we're looking at is not a Docetism debate. It is actually, there is two factions of Christians, the traditionalists and the revelationists. And the revelationists say that the only authority that is true is Jesus talking to you directly right now. Like, we're having revelations that trumps everything. And the traditionalists are like, oh, we can't have that, right? Like, so we invent pedigrees back to the original apostles, and they say, no, only the original historical tradition is legitimate. We can reject all of these, like, spiritualists who claim to be still talking to the dead Jesus or whatever. And this is the fight, right, between these two groups. And everything that survived, which is the Orthodox stuff, are the traditionalists, not mythicists, but let's call it the revelationists. We don't have any other documents. They weren't preserved. Anyway, so these scholars are arguing that, right? And so you got scholars that are saying Docetism doesn't exist. You've got these scholars saying that, no, it was really a debate between these revelationists and traditionalists. And I'm looking at it and it's like, you're all but basically just saying that there's historicists and mythicists, right? Like, this is like, let's just like name the elephant in the room. It was like, you're really talking about the traditionalists or historicists, the revelationists or mythicists. And there's a lot of evidence for this. So to rewind for people who don't know what Docetism is, the modern construct of Docetism is try to explain a bunch of weird texts that we have by saying that, oh, there's this faction of Christians. We don't have any of their texts. It's all lost. Or they might claim we have fragments of them or whatever, but we don't. But it's this other sort of unorthodox Christian group that was teaching that Jesus was an illusion, like he was like a hologram or something, right? Like he looked like he was getting crucified and stuff, but it was really kind of like the phantom. It wasn't really a real Jesus. And so Docetism is supposed to be explained by this, that it's still historicist. Yeah, Jesus was crucified by Pilate and stuff, but it was a fake body. It was an image or whatever. The real Jesus was floating in space or whatever, like whatever the thing is. The Docetism model was based on this model that was like historicist, that it was just Christians who admit that it all happened, but it was an illusion, right? It was all illusion magic, God's illusion magic or whatever. That's Docetism. And that's what the field has now agreed doesn't exist. There's no evidence that any Christian believed this at all. And so, well, now then what did they, well, like, who are these groups? And what were they arguing? And so I went back and looked at these, and like one of the seminal texts is Ignatius, right? Where he gives this list. I'll just read it, actually.
Yeah.
So, and this is like the key passage. There are other passages in Ignatius, but this is the main one.
Right.
And it's Trallians 9, so section 9 of the letter to the Trallians. Stop your ears when anyone speaks to you at variance with the Jesus Christ who is descended from David and came through Mary, who really was born and ate and drank, who really was persecuted under Pontius Pilate, and who really was crucified and died in the sight of witnesses in heaven and on earth, and even under the earth, who really was raised from the dead too, his Father resurrecting him in the same way his Father will resurrect those of us who believe in him by Jesus Christ, apart from whom we do not truly have life. Now, the thing is, like, the assumption was, oh, he's talking about people who thought it was an illusion. But in fact, none of this would debate that, right? So he's talking about, like, no, he crucified and died in the sight of witnesses. And it was like, there's another passage where he's talking about eating. Like, he really eat, like, people saw him eat or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, how would that rebut an illusion?
To Christians.
That's right. He's trying. There's Christians who say this. So when he says, like, the Christians who are denying that Jesus was descended from David and came through Mary and really was born and ate and drank, like, so there's Christians denying all of these things. Like, what?
Right.
What were they arguing then? Like, what? Right. Yeah. So like, this is the thing. So the modern Docetist label was to try and say that this is, these are Christians who believe that it was all an illusion. It was like some sort of hologram walking around. But that can't be, because this does not clearly argue against that at all. So if you say, like, no, there were witnesses to his eating and drinking, it's like, well, how does that rebut the illusion thing? Like, obviously the illusion also has witnesses. Yeah. Like how like seeing it doesn't prove that it's not an illusion. So clearly he's not talking about illusionists. He's not talking about this, right? He's talking about something else. What is he talking about? And I have to say, like, if you just step back and forget Docetism for a moment and look at it, I don't know, it looks like he's talking about Christians who deny any of this happening, right? So like,
I emphasize so much of that. It's like, it's weird because you could say, well, I mean, you could still argue he's of the seed of David. He did this, he did that in his phantom state. But when you say really, I think that's where you nail it down.
Yeah, right.
It's like, really.
Well, it's also, the key thing is witnesses. Like, right. Witnesses does not rebut the illusionism, because obviously the illusion also has witnesses.
Yes, because they can see
like
an illusion.
Right, like, how do you tell, right? Like, so the thing is like, it's clearly he's talking about Christians who said none of this happened.
They believe that it's mythology.
Right, yeah. Well, so we don't really know that. He doesn't say that, right? Yeah. So we don't know. He's telling us these Christians deny all these things. They're like, well, then what was their belief?
What did they believe?
Right, yeah, what was their belief? Who are these people? And of course he's saying shun them, never talk to them, yada, yada.
Yeah.
He adds elsewhere, he says, like, no, he was really baptized by John, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, then, like, there are Christians who deny that he was baptized by John. You know, like,
love those.
You go through this, like, what are we talking about here? Now, one of the clues is 2 Peter, right? So 2 Peter is also doing this. He's slagging off these other Christians, calling them evil, vile, immoral, never talk to them, get rid of them, shun them, etc. But who are these other Christians he's talking about? And he says they're Christians who say that they're all cleverly devised myths. And to rebut that, of course, 2 Peter is a forgery. So 2 Peter is pretending to be Peter. Someone's pretending to be Peter. And he rebuts this by saying, no, I was there. I witnessed it. I saw this. Right. So it's like, that means that the enemies that he's attacking, these other Christians, said that he didn't see this, that Peter wasn't there, that this didn't happen.
Again, to your point, though, there are people who've used the Docetism and try to put it in here to explain. But 2 Peter does not at all talk about.
It's again, like, yeah, I saw this. How does that rebut illusionism? Like, illusionism is not on his mind. You can tell 2 Peter's not even addressing illusionism.
Am I correct in saying, because when I read, after reading your book, I go back to 2 Peter, I open the whole, read the whole chapter, you know me, I'm like footplates and everything. Yeah. And I'm reading and I'm going, it sounds more like what 2 Peter's doing, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's taking the transfiguration moment from the Gospels.
That's right.
And it's like, I'm Peter, and I
it
was
was-
there. I saw it.
Affidavit, I was there. Yeah.
I saw it. Well, no shit. You're going to see a phantom or a real dude. Either one doesn't do it. Why would you say that? Is that that narrative happened.
Yeah.
So,
and the juxtaposition, he says the enemies say it's a cleverly devised myth.
which means it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's fake. And he does keep talking about it in such a way that suggests that what these other Christians are doing are saying it's all allegory. You have to have the right interpretation of what the text really means. It's not history. So these are mythicist Christians. These are Christians who not only don't believe Jesus came to earth yet, they actually are fighting back. Like they're arguing against this new movement of Christians who are saying he did. And so you have this whole mythicist Christian saying like, whoa, like, what are you guys talking about? You're wrong. And then what do we have? We have the historicists saying, oh, you guys are evil fuckers, you're liars, whatever, fuck off. And who wins in the long run?
Of course.
The traditionalists, right? And so they destroy all the documents. We have none, right? We have none of these documents from these enemies that they're talking about. Second Peter's opponents, we don't know who they are, what they said. Ignatius opponents, we don't know who they are, what they said. All their documents, all their literature is erased. It's basically all we have are these polemical attacks on them. And there's many other examples we can get. There's passages in Irenaeus and Hippolytus and a lot of others that we can go through. That's the same thing over and over and over again. It's not illusionism. I think there's a ton of evidence here for mythicist Christians. And so what we're seeing is we get to see like the Soviet, propaganda machine where we only get to see the Soviets' version of history, not the real history. And we have to reconstruct the real history from like, oh, we can see this guy was erased from this photo. I wonder why he was erased from the photo, right? Like you have to get at the history behind their like party line, essentially.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing a party line, which is, no, Jesus was real. We really saw him. We touched him. It was totally real. But it's not illusionism they're attacking. It's mythicism that they're attacking. And so there were the genuine Christian believers who said this. Now, one of the other lines of argument gets to that traditionalist versus revelationist argument. And I cite and quote some scholars who do this with 1 John, for example. And they're reinterpreting the Johannine literature this way. And they're saying, I don't think the problem is, I don't think they're focused on the flesh.
Like Docetism.
Yeah, so like,
Docetism versus
and these are the other scholars saying this already under peer review, their own thing, separate from me. They're not arguing for mythicism. They're doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, no, we don't think, so it says like, those who deny that Jesus came in the flesh, right?
Yeah.
And the Docetist attack to this was to say, oh, it's the flesh. So it wasn't flesh, it was a hologram or something like it. But what these new scholars are saying is like, that can't be right. And they explain why it can't be right. And they're totally correct about this. Like I point out, like, yeah, you're right. Like it can't be the flesh that they're talking about. It's the came, the past tense that he came. Yeah. So the idea that, because everybody agrees, even the mythicists would have agreed he came in the flesh and he was in the flesh when he died, right? That's the whole basis of the gospel. He was incarnated, he was in the flesh and then died. That's essential. So that can't be the debate. The debate isn't whether it was flesh. The debate is whether he already came or he was coming in the future. So it's like when you see in Paul, like 1 Corinthians 11, there's some other places where he talks about we're going to celebrate the Eucharist until Jesus comes. He doesn't say comes again.
Yeah.
Or a second time. He doesn't till he comes. So it sounds like Paul, like he doesn't know about Jesus.
Right. And I've heard Christians go,
yeah.
well, he's just, I've heard the arguments.
Yeah.
We know what I'm talking about with that. Well, he's not giving you the whole context of he's already been here. And so he's just saying he's going to come. Like if I said, hey, Richard Carey's got cotton, but he's came to your house before, right there. Yeah. I get the rebuttal.
No, absolutely. And to the point that you could say like, that's not a smoking gun, right?
Of course.
That reason.
When you add in.
But the thing is, when you connect this to what these new scholars are arguing about the Johannine letters, is like, well, hold on. If he hasn't come yet, he's coming in the future, then this is mythicist Christians. He became incarnate and died in the celestial realm, etc., in the firmament, yada yada, to effect his powerful magic, and then revealed this to everybody, right? And there's scriptures that also had hidden messages telling everybody this would happen. Then that explains the text too, right? So these same scholars' argument actually supports mythicism, because what they're saying is there were these group of Christians. Like the way they put it is that they didn't care that he came before. It was more important that he was going to come in the future, and the current revelations matter. But a better explanation of all of that is that these Christians didn't think he came, right? They said he's not come yet. And this is the argument between these two groups. And so the Johannine literature was invented forged essentially to rebut these Christians. No, he really came. We touched him. We saw him. We touched him. We saw him. We touched him. We saw him. It says literally 3 times in like 3 sentences. No, it was real. He was there. So they're rebutting these Christians who are claiming that he hadn't come yet. Like, why are you claiming he's in the flesh? You can't say that from the Gospels. Those are cleverly devised myths. Those are allegories. Those are not like, you're not supposed to take them literally. That's what the voice you think is going on that you're not allowed to hear, that they're responding to. So anyway, when you go through all of the evidence this way, you look at all the primary evidence over and over again, especially even the specific Greek of Ignatius, and then bring in what all these other scholars are saying, and it's like, put 2 and 2, you get 4, right? Like, I think we have a ton of evidence of this. There were mythicist Christians. We have a lot of evidence of this, and I think we should acknowledge that.
Okay. I have a couple questions that I think are hypotheticals to run through with it. And it made me think of Jews that are waiting for the Messiah now, right? So kind of like you have Jews who say the Messiah hasn't come yet.
That's right.
Something to this effect.
Yeah.
The other thing is it makes me think, did these mythicists believe that Jesus was supposed to actually come to earth? And if so, you could, using your model, hypothesize why gospel construction was fabricated. Because one group is wanting control. They're fabricating narratives about a historical dude that's supposed to come to earth. These guys are going, bullshit, you're making up stories about the Messiah is supposed to come. I'm just hypothesizing.
Yeah.
No behind the scenes.
Right.
But like,
that would be a good description of the Gospel of John, because the Gospel of John is very adamant that you have to believe this stuff really happened.
Right.
Like, it explicitly says this, like at the end of the book, right?
Right.
If you don't, you're damned if you don't believe this really. You really better fucking believe this really happened. You don't get that in Mark. Mark never says that. Like, Mark never says you better believe this is literal. So like Mark, you could say like, that's all allegory and he didn't expect you to take it literally. Or if he did, he thinks you're an outsider and you're a dupe. Like, if you're a fool if you take it literally.
Right.
You're the one that they don't want to have insider knowledge of. Just like what Mark says in Mark 4 about Jesus and the parables. It's like the ones who are taking this stuff literally, they're the outsiders who won't be saved. They don't understand. But you guys inside, I'm going to tell you, it's all allegory. It's there's no literal, whatever parable it is. Like whoever's in the parable, that never really happened. I'm not saying this is a real thing. I'm saying that it symbolizes something about the gospel. And so you have to understand what the gospel means. I think the whole Gospel of Mark is like that. But by the time you get to John, it's flipped. The script is 100% the other way around.
Fish and loaves and touch me.
Yeah, but even just the explicit, like, you better believe this is real, and they invent witnesses. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
It's clear that they're trying to push the historical reality, whereas Mark was not.
Yeah, Mark's much more fun narrative to me, not so like, believe me, dude, bro, I promise you, I touched him, I saw him, I touched him, I smelled him, I touched him.
Yeah, no, it's not in there.
What 1 John does, right? It's like, I touched him, I saw him, and you made me laugh. I had to I made a meme, that day I made an image meme where I was like, trust me, bro, I touched him, I saw him, I touched him, and I saw him, and I felt him, and I sniffed him, and I smelled him, and I saw him. Oh, and by the way, did I tell you that I saw him? That. So it's like, okay, we believe you, bro. So there's something going on here. So there's a problem. And I guess I want to tie this to Paul, because your model of mythicism, you would look at Paul. This group, which we can't say anything about other than they think the Gospels, and we know it's the Gospels because the fake Peter's talking about.
Right, yeah. And also Ignatius's list of things is all gospel stuff.
Gospel stuff. 1 John seems to hint at it. It's not as explicit gospel-wise there, but it is in a sense.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, so you have this trope in the New Testament. You got it from Ignatius, and I'm sure we can find other elements. There's probably more we haven't even discovered, right? But if you take that to Paul, how do we make sense of, like, I guess what I'm getting at is till he come, right? So all these things happen in space, according to your model.
Yeah.
And he hasn't come yet. So do you think Paul has in mind, including whoever these other guys are, that he is supposed to come to Earth?
Yeah.
And that's why I wondered about the gospel.
Paul is vague about
Where?
does he literally touch Earth? What I mean is, like, in 1 Thessalonians 4, Paul is explicit. Jesus is going to, when he says Jesus comes,
We'll meet him in the air.
we're going to meet him in the air. So like, and the implication is, and we get this from rabbinical literature too, the implication is the earth is melting. So like, there's not even going to be an earth to land on, right? So like it's just being dissolved, it's being disintegrated, it's done, right? Like, so we're going to meet Jesus in the air, and then a new earth is going to be created that we'll live on, right? and that'll be the paradise on earth or whatever. Or maybe Paul thought we would live back in the original paradise in the third heaven or something. But whatever Paul thought, like when he says Jesus will come, he doesn't mean like he's going to land on earth. He means he's going to come like just, you'll be able to see him. Like he's going to come, he's coming, but he'll be like, come join me in this. And then you grow wings or whatever, fly up to him or something like that. Like that's how Paul's thinking of it. So when he says comes, he means that, right? Okay. So he's not talking about like Jesus. He's not talking about Revelation where Jesus comes and literally sits on earth and rules for 1,000 years before the devil escapes. And it's just whole other thing. He's not, that's not what Paul is imagining. Paul is imagining that everything's going to get destroyed and we're going to meet Jesus in the air. For him, that means that's coming. That's what it means for Jesus to come further down to where we can see him and we can go literally just, we can reach up and meet him, that kind of.
So when we get to Ignatius's quote, when he talks about he really is the seed of David, he really is this. Well, Paul thought that. So the question then becomes, is he trying to act like he came here? Is that, what do you think?
Yeah, so that's a good point to point out the David thing. So this gets into the language, right? So when Paul says he's of the seed of David, he uses a verb that means become or came into, right? Like he's not talking about birth.
Got it.
So the word can mean birth, but it's weirdly vague. So Paul uses these idioms that normally mean this, but he changes the verb every single time, and that's really suspicious. And I talk about this in the book, like why would he change the verb to the thing that means making or becoming or whatever? So like it's very weird. And we have examples of scribes trying to doctor the manuscripts of Paul to fix that because they know the verb is weird. It's the wrong verb. He's saying something I don't like. So they change it into the actual proper birth verb, right? So we know scholars were interested in doing this. And when we get to Ignatius and we read it, he's done exactly the same thing. So when he's talking about like Jesus descended from David, he literally says, specifically using specific Greek vocabulary, that he descended from David, right? Like he's literally from David. He's basically erasing the vague language of Paul, the weird, strange language of Paul, turning it into an unequivocal, yes, he's a descendant, biological descendant of David. Right. He uses that specifically. So that you can tell how Ignatius is transforming the message of Paul, where he's, we got to make it clearly historical. So that's the thing. So that's what he means is like, that's when he immediately goes to Mary, came out of Mary. Like, okay, so there's an actual mother, like not a hypothetical, abstract, allegorical mother. No, a real mother who had a name. Her name was Mary. She was an actual thing, right? So it's all trying to create all the gospel elements to be real. That's why they have to have witnesses to Jesus eating. Someone has to have seen him eating. Why wouldn't they have seen him eating? Like if he was a historical person, like why do you have to say this, right? Like clearly his whole message is trying to deny the arguments of these Christians, saying that no one saw Jesus eat. What are you talking about? That's just metaphor. It's allegory. Like that wasn't a historical event. Also the baptism. No, he wasn't really baptized by John. That's just a symbol that represents whatever. So that's his opponents. Clearly, to me, seem to be these mythicists who are describing the Gospels as just allegories. Not a historical Jesus. Jesus just, he underwent his death and resurrection and whatever in the firmament, but no one could see that. Like no one was there. Like it's a thing that happened. It definitely did happen. Jesus does exist. He did become incarnate. He did become of flesh. He became Davidic Jewish flesh and died. And he did all the things the scripture said. It says no one was there at the time. Like he was way up there. It's like too far. We can't see it. And we're just waiting for him to come down and rescue us. That's still yet to happen. Right. And so that's the view that you get. And like I said, a lot of the scholarship is moving in this direction. They just aren't going the extra step and saying like, you know what? This all makes sense if you just get rid of the historical Jesus. Like it makes more sense if you do that.
Thank you.